What's up guys, Gohash here, and today we're going to do a review on the anime Parasyte. This video is going to involve spoilers, so if you haven't watched Parasyte already, go watch it. Or go check out my spoiler-free review on Parasyte to kind of get an idea of what the anime is about. So before we get into the review, I just want to say that I'm not a professional anime expert or reviewer or anything like that. You know, everything I'm going to be saying is just going to be based on my thoughts and opinions towards the show. Alright, so without further ado, we're going to get right into it. I really loved the plot of the show. It was really unique and dark. These worm-like parasites would take over human brains, and in order to survive, they would eat human flesh. Once a parasite would take over a human brain, it would then have the ability to change its physical appearance at any time. It could also transform its head into these tentacle blades that could basically slice through anything. When a parasite takes over the human brain, it kind of becomes the human head, and then so everything below the neck is still human. It's kind of like a double-edged sword situation where even though that parasites are very powerful and dangerous and can kill humans very easily, they are also vulnerable as well because of their human hosts. If their heart was to get damaged or if they were to bleed out, they would die like any other person. So this is the parasite's only real weakness, because otherwise they would be pretty invincible. And we kind of see an example of this later on in the show when they introduce the character Goto that possesses multiple parasites. He's basically invincible. He's super OP. From the jump, the show did a great job of making viewers feel like at any point in time, any character could die. Even our boy Shinichi, the main character of the show, basically dies at episode 7 or 8, getting stabbed in the heart, and it takes Migi, the parasite's attached to his hand, merging with his heart to save his life. So that's just one example of, no characters being safe to dying in the show. I really liked how they developed Shinichi throughout Parasyte. He starts off as a weak, timid, emotional high schooler that could get thrown around like a rag doll. Then after having his hand taken over by a parasite, Migi, Shinichi starts to change. Now being aware of parasites living amongst society and how they feed on human flesh, he now kind of feels it's his responsibility to protect the human race by killing these parasites. So now he's willing to put his life on the line and fight these monsters in order to protect the human race, which he probably wouldn't have done if he didn't have Migi as his right hand. Shinichi goes through some major character development after two things happen. So one, when he finds out that a parasite has killed and taken over his mom's body, and then two, that he meets this parasite and it ends up stabbing him in the heart. When this happens, Migi is forced to merge with Shinichi's heart in order to save both of their lives. After that, Migi's parasite cells are distributed throughout Shinichi's body. This changes Shinichi, making him stronger, faster, and more emotionless like a parasite. At this point in time, Shinichi becomes a boss. He's no longer a weakling like he was initially at the beginning of the show, and now he's able to handle things on his own much better, even without Migi's help. He's no longer getting bodied by any and everybody, but now he's also whooping people's asses on his own with ease. The only thing I really disliked about Shinichi's character was towards the end of the show when Shinichi and Migi were fighting Goto. Migi ends up sacrificing himself in order to save Shinichi's life, and Shinichi decides to run away like a scared little bitch. I just would have loved for Shinichi to go out like a G, fighting alongside Migi until the very end, just because of everything that they went through throughout the show. And Shinichi would have never been in the place that he had been without Migi, and vice versa. They needed each other in order to be the strong duo that they were. For example, let's say that they end up losing the fight and Goto absorbs Migi from Shinichi, and then after the fact Shinichi runs away. I would have been totally fine with a situation like that. My favorite character in Parasyte is probably Migi. I really think it was just his subtle humor and his interactions between himself and Shinichi that made me really like him. In one of the earlier episodes in the season, there's a particular scene where Shinichi's going to the bathroom
Shinichi.
Jesus, seriously? I told you not to talk whenever there's people around.
Please hold still. I'm going to try to make your sex organ erect.
The hell you are? No, stop that! I cannot believe you!
Shinichi, that's cold.
Be quiet.
If you do not wash properly, dermatophytes will propagate, causing such maladies as shocking.
Shut up!
Dude, it's kind of hard for me to pee next to a guy talking to his pecker.
I thought that was hilarious. And there was one time in the show where
My parents are out of town right now. Do you maybe want to stay over?
No thanks. I should go.
Very disappointing. I'd hoped I'd get the chance to see humans mate.
I'll go to sleep.
the way Migi said these things, and just the fact that I watched the show in English dub, kind of made the delivery that much better. And it just made me crack up every time because the voice actor that played Migi had this monotone voice, and it was really funny to me. Migi does end up developing throughout the show just as much or even more so than Shinichi. Originally, Migi was really just an emotionless creature and only really thought of situations in a logical setting that would help him survive. He soon developed a personality, a sense of humor, and he eventually sacrificed his own life to save Shinichi, which goes against his own primal instinct, which is surviving for himself, doing whatever is necessary for him to survive. Side characters like Murano were basically useless, and Kana was just way undervalued. Kana uniquely had the ability to sense other parasites, within a certain radius, but for some reason she only thought that she could sense Shinichi throughout the show. And she ended up becoming a little obsessed. She'd follow him all over the place, following to his house, to his school, around the town, all over the place without him even knowing. And she even tried to mess things up between Shinichi and Murano. I don't have a problem with the show trying to have a love triangle, but it felt like Parasyte made a poor attempt at this. Shinichi never really developed a relationship with Kana, and it didn't help that she was just basically a stalker and never actually talked to him, and kind of just thought that he was her knight in shining armor without even trying to talk to him. They really could have done something with that relationship between Shinichi and Kana, and they could have really made it into an actual love triangle. For example, she has the ability to sense other parasites, and even in the show, Shinichi tells her about the parasites and about Migi and all the things that he's experienced, but she doesn't believe him. But let's say that she believes him, and she ends up teaming up with him and helping him find these parasites and kill these parasites, and they start to develop a relationship that Shinichi doesn't really have with Murano, because Kana can see the real side of him and see the world that he truly lives in. And Shinichi can't really talk to or relate to a lot of people about the things that he experiences or the things that he goes through. So that would be a way that those two, Shinichi and Kana, could connect, and you could have a little romance going on the side and make that love triangle more interesting. But instead, you had two people that liked each other. You had Kana, that was an obsessive little stalker, and she ends up dying because of that. Plain as day, that's all it was. She thought that she could sense Shinichi all the time. She runs to this abandoned building. Oh, guess what? It's a parasite. Oh, kills her. But Shinichi shows up just in time after she gets stabbed through the heart. I don't think anyone was too butthurt about that, because we didn't develop any relationship with the character. She was crazy. She deserved it. Moving on. Next. A character that was actually interesting was Rikyo Tamiya, a parasite that enjoyed blending with society and learning from them in order to further her species. She wanted to see if there was a way for parasites to sustain themselves without eating human flesh. kind of similar to the situation that Shinichi had with Migi, how Migi would survive off of the nutrients that Shinichi would eat. And Riko Tamiya kind of started off as a very cold character that only really cared about herself and her species, but things kind of changed when she got pregnant. She had a baby, a human baby, and started caring for the baby. She initially wanted to do experiments on the baby, but over time she truly started to love that baby, and then she sacrificed her life to save the baby. Parasyte's story is pretty decent. It has its moments where it's pretty good, but then it also has moments where things don't really make that much sense. Like when they established in the show that you can identify a parasite from a human by taking a lock of a person's hair. They completely forget about this when the City Hall massacre happens. You know, the government has a serial killer teaming up with them to identify who's a parasite and who's not a parasite when they raid the City Hall. They didn't really need to do that in the first place when they already established that you could take a lock of hair to assess if somebody was a parasite or not. So you could have just went through the building, picked people's hairs out. If it didn't turn out to be a parasite, they could get out. If they did, they'd kill them on sight. But they totally ignored that. They used a serial killer, and they ended up killing a lot of innocent bystanders in the process. But they even established, like in the show, that the government didn't really care about protecting the bystanders. It was more about killing all of the parasites that were in that building. So they were willing to kind of make that sacrifice. And it doesn't really make sense to trust a serial killer, because at the end of the day, they're going to say or do whatever is in their best interest. And we end up seeing this later on in the City Hall massacre. The serial killer ends up escaping. He shoots his bodyguard and runs away. The anime compares humans to parasites a few times throughout the show, raising the question as to why is it wrong for the parasites if humans are necessarily doing the same things with animals. And it kind of puts things in perspective and makes people think about that for a second, and whether or not what we're doing is right or wrong. And if who's to say that we aren't parasites in a sense, and we aren't the ones that need to be exterminated. I like this aspect of the show because it doesn't force a viewpoint on you. It allows viewers to gather their thoughts and really think things through and decide for themselves what they think. Overall, Parasyte is a pretty good anime that's a must-watch in my opinion. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like down below. If you've watched Parasyte, share your thoughts in the comments below. Also, I just want to make a quick shout out to all the people that have been subscribed to my channel. I really appreciate the support, guys. I hope to continue bringing you guys good, solid content in the future. And that's all I got for you. I'll see you next time.